Good morning. Today is Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. We commemorate Pesach, the Exodus, in many, many ways, but the main celebration is at the Passover Seder. The first night for us outside of Israel. The second night, we have a Seder, which is a meal. It's a meal during which we tell the story with symbols. That's what the Seder is. And the meal is the Korban Pesach, the Paschal offering. So during the time when the Beit HaMikdash was standing in Jerusalem, everyone would get together into groups, and each group would offer an animal as a sacrifice, and then bring it home. It will be roasted over an open fire, fresh roasted lamb from the grill. What could be better? And that was the centerpiece of the meal. You could have side dishes and hors d'oeuvres and dessert, but that was the main course of the meal. And that's commanded in our Torah portion, the Parsha Bo. Today, of course, we do not have the Korban Pesach. We have a symbol, a reminder of the Paschal offering, the zroa, the roasted bone on the Seder plate. That's only a reminder that there used to be and there will be a Korban Pesach, but we don't have it today. And instead of the eating of Korban Pesach, we eat the matzah by itself as the afikomen. Now, there's a strange detail that is mentioned in this week's Torah portion about the Korban Pesach. First of all, we know, as I mentioned, it had to be roasted over an open fire. It had to be in one house, meaning a group of people had to designate themselves to eat it together in one place. And most importantly, the Torah tells us in this week's Torah portion, Kol Adas Yisrael Yasu Oso, the entire congregation of Israel must participate. It was a ritual that bound us into a congregation, into a community. But the particularly curious detail is, the Torah says, the etzem lo sishberubo. While you're eating it, you're not allowed to break a bone. Of course, you eat the flesh, but you're not allowed to break a bone that's connected to the meat, to the flesh. Now, that's a strange kind of a rule. What's wrong with breaking a bone? Why should this be a requirement for how we eat the Korban Pesach? It's a very, very strange thing. So the Sefer HaChinuch, which is Rabbi Aaron of Barcelona, he lived several hundred years ago. He wrote a commentary on the Torah where he explains the reasons as best we know for each of the 613 commandments. So he writes, the reason for this detail is mipnei she'ein miderech hakavod. It's not polite. It's not polite if you are having an informal dinner at your house and you're watching the Super Bowl and you have some chicken wings or some ribs, so you pick it up with your fingers and you eat it. And you eat it with the bone. But if you're at a fancy restaurant, you're in some kind of formal setting, you don't pick up meat with your hands and the bone. You don't get close to the bone. You cut it with a fork and a knife. And therefore, if you would eat along the bone and you might break the bone, it would be a lack of etiquette, and it would show a lack of respect for the mitzvah. If you're eating this Korban Pesach as a mitzvah, a very important mitzvah, do it in a nice way. Do it the way you would do it at a formal dinner, not like it was a casual Super Bowl party. Now, it could be that this requirement, according to the Chinuch, is connected to another requirement, which is that the Korban Pesach must be eaten al hasova, when we are already satisfied. In other words, the meat of the Korban Pesach, eating a piece of the meat of the Korban Pesach, that's the mitzvah. That is not fulfilled when we're hungry. We should eat something else first so that we're no longer hungry. And then we have a piece of the Korban Pesach, al hasova. And the reason for that is to show that the reason that we're eating this delicious roast lamb is not because it's delicious roast lamb by itself, but it's because it's a mitzvah. So I'm not doing it because I'm starving and I'm so hungry and I'm going to rip into it and chew on every single bite and chew on every single bone and maybe the bones will be broken. No, I've already had something to eat. This is just the comes at the end, not when I'm stuffed. I shouldn't be too stuffed, but I'm not hungry. I'm eating it because of the mitzvah. And therefore, to show that I'm eating it because it's the mitzvah, I'm not going to attack it, like when I'm starving, so I eat something else. And that's the reason that at the Pesach Seder, there were 2 korbanos, and on our Seder plate, we have 2 foods that remind us of an offering of a sacrifice. One is the Korban Pesach, and the other is the Chagiga, the Korban Chagiga. Most of us have a roasted egg as the reminder of that sacrifice. We talked about why it should be an egg, but the idea was the Korban Chagiga, you could cook that in any manner that you wanted. So that was the main course. So now you had that, and you had some vegetables, and you had some potatoes, you had some whatever else you had to eat, some matzah kugel. And then, when you're no longer hungry, each person gets a piece of the Korban Pesach. So now we eat it, and we're eating it as a mitzvah, the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. And that's the reason that today we don't have the Korban Pesach, but we do the same thing with matzah. We eat matzah before the meal. We make the brachos and we eat matzah before the meal, but we also eat matzah as the afikomen, the dessert, the last thing that we eat. Now, first of all, it's very important. Don't stuff yourself so much during the Seder that you can't stand the thought of having to eat a little bit more matzah, because you have to want the matzah. But the idea is the matzah for the afikomen at the end of the meal is the main mitzvah of matzah. Yes, we made the brachos earlier because you have to make a bracha as soon as you can eat the matzah. But the main mitzvah of eating matzah at the Seder is at the end so that it is al hasova. I already had some other food to eat. And so I'm not hungry. I'm eating this piece of matzah because it's a mitzvah. Okay. So those are technical and logistic reasons for this requirement not to break a bone and to eat the Korban Pesach when we are not still hungry but already a little satisfied, and the way we do it today. Okay. But it's curious that this word, etzem, which means bone, is used also in the Torah in a very different context. At the very beginning of creation, the Torah says that God created Adam, man. And then God created Eve, Chava, woman, from Adam. Vayomer ha'adam, and man said, Adam said, Zos hapam, now this time, etzem me'atzmai, this other person, this new person, Eve, Chava, is a bone from my bone, right? The Torah indicates that God took a bone from Adam's body and from that fashioned this woman, Eve, Chava. So he said, Adam said, Zos hapam, this time, etzem me'atzmai, this is a bone from my bone, ubasar mibsari, and flesh from my flesh. So this is an individual, a female, created from me, from Adam. So etzem means bone. But the word etzem means something else. The word etzem also means essence. The essence of something is the etzem. So in other words, what Adam was saying is, this is the essence of my essence and the flesh of my flesh. And the Torah says, Al Kain, therefore, a man should leave his mother and his father and cleave to his wife, v'hayu lebasar echad, and they should be one flesh. What does that mean, one flesh? So Rashi says, when a husband and wife marry, they become basar echad, one flesh, because they can create, with God's help, they create a baby that is one flesh that came from both of them. It doesn't mean that the two of them become merged into one person. That's not true. They each retain their own flesh, their own identity, but together they create something that is a new flesh, a new entity. But notice, v'hayu lebasar echad, they will become one flesh. It does not say that they will become one bone. The bone does not come together. Only the flesh. Only the basar. Now, my friend and my teacher, Abe Mezrich, suggests that the story of Adam and Chava is telling us about the merging of flesh into a new child that is born. But it does not say anything about the merging of etzem, of bones. The bones remain distinct. You have your bone, you have your bone, they don't connect. When we were freed as a people, which is described in this week's Torah portion of Bo, and we leave Egypt, and then every year, including this year, we're going to commemorate it on Pesach, and we have this meal, but we have a very specific meal. We have a meal that does not have an etzem. Which could be broken. We don't want that. Don't break it. So we want to stay away from the etzem. Because the etzem is what was separate between Adam and Chava. Remember, that did not merge. So the part that is separate, we don't want at the Pesach Seder. Only the basar, only the flesh, only the meat. Because the flesh is the part that unites. V'hayu lebasar echad. They became one flesh. That's what brings us together. So the Torah says, etzem lo sishberu bo. Don't take the chance of breaking the bone. Keep the bones away. Just the flesh. And then the next words of the Torah are, kol hadas Yisrael yasu oso. Every single Jewish person must do this ritual, must have this meal. Of a meal with flesh that connects us, but not with bones that separates us. And that's the way in which the Korban Pesach, and today, even without the actual Korban Pesach, but the matzah and the maror that we have in its stead, it becomes a meal that creates B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel, which is lots and lots of people, into ADATH Yisrael, the congregation of Israel, the community of Israel, the unified unit of Israel that is connected one to another. That's what was created at the moment of Exodus, at the Pesach night, and that is what we recreate and reinstate imagine and re-energize the sense in which we are all connected to each other as one. That's the central theme of Pesach. And we do that in this small detail of not getting involved with the etzem, which is separate, only with the basar, which connects us. This was the purpose of that first Seder, to connect these children of Israel into a Jewish people, into an ADATH Yisrael, a congregation of Israel. And that's the goal of the Seder every year. Kol ADATH Yisrael yasu oso. The congregation of Israel should do this. Every single person who's connected, who's committed, who feels a part. That's what we try to achieve by the Korban Pesach, and that is conveyed by this detail. Etzem lo sishbru bo. Stay away from the bones, stick with the flesh, because it's the flesh that connects us. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.